CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to The World Today, live from CGTN in London. I'm Polly Middlehurst. Our top stories this hour. Ring out across the UK to mark the death of Prince Philip. This is the scene right now, live in Windsor from Windsor Castle, and we'll also be live today at Buckingham Palace as tributes pour in from around the world for the Duke, who died on Friday at the age of 99. Also today, another hurdle for Europe's vaccine rollout as safety concerns put some people off having the jab. And as violence continues in Northern Ireland, our special coverage on Brexit 100 days on asks whether withdrawal from the European Union is threatening Britain's own unity now. So gun salutes across the UK have marked the death of Britain's Prince Philip. Batteries of cannons in London, Edinburgh, Cardiff, Belfast and other cities fired 41 rounds at 1-minute intervals. Military leaders honoured the former naval officer who served as royal consort to his wife, Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II, for 73 years. He died on Friday at Windsor Castle, just 2 months before what would have been his 100th birthday. Well, Naweed Jabakil is outside Buckingham Palace and joins us now live. What is the atmosphere where you are, Naweed?
Well, Polly, things looking a lot quieter here than they did yesterday, and that's partly because Buckingham Palace and the government both moved fairly swiftly after the news broke of Prince Philip's death to try and tell people not to come out physically to lay flowers and not to pay tributes physically to the prince because of the coronavirus pandemic. Instead, they said people should move online where they can sign an online book of condolences or to donate to a charity, either one of the prince's choosing or one of their own. But people are still coming out here, and what has happened instead today is they've been told to stand in a single order queue line, essentially, to come one by one and lay their flowers and then move on to try and keep social distancing measures. Really a sense of national mourning here still very much across the country. On Friday, when after the news broke, BBC, the national broadcaster, actually took its programming off air. Instead, there was dedicated programming looking at the life of Prince Philip, and his 4 children also paid tribute to the Duke of Edinburgh, including Prince Charles, the heir to the British throne, who had this to say about the indelible mark that he'll leave not just on this country, but on his immediate family as well.
His energy was astonishing in supporting my mama and doing it for such a long time, and in some extraordinary way being able to go on doing it for so long. What he's done has amounted to an astonishing achievement, I think.
Prince Charles there speaking about the Duke of Edinburgh, and that was, of course, recorded before he passed away, which gives you a sense of preparations for this now. Now that the news is sinking in, the attention of the family no doubt turning towards what happens with the funeral. And he was in poor health in February. He was taken to hospital, spent almost a month there, underwent heart surgery. So preparations had been made beforehand, and those are taking place today in Windsor as well for the funeral.
Now, you mentioned that the palace has given instructions to people because of the public health emergency that crowds shouldn't be gathering outside Windsor Castle and Buckingham Palace. But what about the funeral arrangements? Do we know what's going to happen there?
Yeah, well, a bit of breaking news. We've just heard that next Saturday will be when the funeral is expected to take place. It will be televised, again, looking at the coronavirus to try and get people to stay at home and watch this in their homes, not to turn out, as would be customary with a funeral like this. In addition to that, to try and help with the coronavirus pandemic, at the moment, this country is still in a third national lockdown. Only 30 people are allowed at funerals. So to help with that, there won't be a state funeral. His body will not lie in state, meaning the public can't go and pay their respects. That's something apparently that the Prince wanted to do himself. But there is really a sense of national mourning. That funeral taking place next Saturday will be one you'd expect that will be watched by millions across the country who feel that they want to pay their respects to the Prince, whether or not they like them or like the royal family or don't like the royal family. I think a lot of people will appreciate the more than 7 decades of public service he provided, not just to this country, but to several others around the world as well.
Naweed Jabakil, thank you very much indeed. Well, let's bring you more on this story now. Joining us live from London is Angela Levin, royal commentator. Thanks for joining us, Angela. You've been watching the royals for many years. What are the standout moments that Prince Philip has contributed to royal life for you?
For me, I think it's very interesting that a man who had the most incredible career in the Navy and was strong and independent would actually take a step right back and walk behind the Queen to allow her to do her job. Now, we're talking about when the Queen was only 21, and it's a very unusual thing for a man to have done at that time, but he wanted to encourage her, and he became what she calls his rock, her rock. And he was always there for her. Other things is that he was always trying gently to modernise the royal family, which is, everybody knows, is a bit stuffy and full of boring protocols. But he did it in a very subtle way. And the reason he did this was because he had to rely on himself. His parents broke up their marriage. The father went off with another woman, and his mother was mentally ill and was often put in a hospital. And he had nowhere to go. He was an orphan, really, and he had no money. And he decided that he had to make himself strong and be of value. And I think that that is a very important and extraordinary characteristic. His love of his family. He needed a family. He's had 4 children, and although he could be quite a disciplinarian and sometimes was rather unkind to Prince Charles, the heir to the throne, because he's quite a soft man, and he preferred Prince Andrew, who liked sport and fighting more than his older brother. He was a very good father, much loved by his grandchildren and by his great-grandchildren. I could go on for a very long time. I think the other one, which is very important, was the Duke of Edinburgh Awards, which he set up in 1956. And this is has gone all around the world. And the idea is that young people get a lot of physical exercise. They learn to conquer what they're scared about. They learn how to be surprised at what they can really do. And I've been listening today to so many of them say, one said, he saved me from going to prison. Another said that he turned my life around. And he had this idea that if you let children really try hard to do something, they can come out of a difficult background and be very successful. Although lots of people who came from very happy backgrounds could also do the same. It was just for women, for girls and boys, and has been a tremendous success.
And Angela, known too sometimes for his rather insensitive, unguarded comments, but if we're to focus on the positive, which is perhaps more fitting in the immediate aftermath of somebody's death, let's think about the stability that he brought to the British monarchy. How would you categorise that?
He brought stability because he would always discuss things with the Queen. He was, it is said, the only person who treated her as a normal human being. So she didn't have a lot of staff saying, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, yes, ma'am, to everything she said. He would analyse it with her. He would discuss it with her. He would try sometimes to move her forward and make it a bit more modern. But he was always there. She knew that he was doing it out of love and care, not to be bossy. And I think that that has enabled her to be the most remarkable queen. Interestingly enough, this was 50 years ago, he made a statement that he thought that he knew the Queen was very popular as a young woman. He thought interest would be lost when she was middle-aged and would come back in great force when she was older. And this is exactly what has happened. She's now one of the most revered and admired women in the world. As she has herself said that this a lot is down to her husband.
Angela Levin, we appreciate your reflections and thoughts. Thank you. Now to other news, and police in Northern Ireland have been attacked with petrol bombs, stones and other objects in a 12th night of violence there. It comes despite calls for calm as a mark of respect after the death of Prince Philip. Well, the unrest threatens to undermine the region's fragile peace between pro-British loyalists who want to remain part of the UK and pro-Irish nationalists who would like Northern Ireland to be part of the Republic of Ireland. And we'll have more from Northern Ireland later in the programme as part of our special Brexit coverage when we look at how the deal to leave the EU has opened up fault lines, it seems, between the nations of the UK. Now, the EU's troubled vaccine rollout has hit another hurdle. First, it was a lack of supply, and now it's vaccine hesitancy as the bad publicity surrounding the AstraZeneca jab takes its toll on public confidence. Rahul Patak reports now on that from Madrid.
In Spain, vaccine hesitancy has been on the rise, following the change in guidance from the government on who can receive the AstraZeneca vaccine. Earlier this week, health officials approved its use for those between 60 and 69. Since then, Madrid residents have been reluctant to come forward, with only around 45% of those asked having confirmed their appointments. The government is now trying to offer reassurance.
From a political point of view, our decisions will always be absolutely based on scientific and technical criteria to guarantee, firstly, the lives of our people and our country's public health, and also to ensure the vaccination process is a success.
Well, previously, the big issue in Spain, like much of the rest of Europe, was one of vaccine supply. Well, supply lines have now increased, so the main challenge is to change public perception on safety so that as many people get vaccinated as possible. In France, Emmanuel Macron visited Delpharm, the first COVID-19 vaccine production plant in France, which he hopes will deliver tens of millions of bottles of vaccine by the end of the year.
What we have seen this morning, in concrete terms for our fellow citizens, are these doses of the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine produced here and then sent to vaccination centres to be used by our fellow citizens and also delivered to our European neighbours.
As Europe looks to ramp up its supply, representatives of the European Medicines Agency, EMA, are visiting Russia to review the country's Sputnik V vaccine. Previously, an official from the European body urged caution in approval at a national level as they continue a rolling review of the drug. Meanwhile, some more bad news for the Anglo-Swedish AstraZeneca vaccine after Hong Kong announced a suspension in its use. Authorities there say they will wait until an upgraded second-generation version of the drug becomes available, as it may be better suited to protect its residents against the new virus variants of the COVID-19 strain. Rahul Pathak, CGTN, Madrid.
Well, the Europe Medicines Agency is reviewing reports of rare blood clots in people who've also taken the Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine. 4 people have reported clotting, 3 of which were in the United States. Johnson & Johnson say they're assessing data with regulators, and the US-based company says that at present no clear causal relationship has been established. Still to come here on The World Today. Protecting coral reefs from their admirers. We take a visit to the South China Sea.
It's a question we've been waiting almost 5 years to answer. It affects millions of people and billions worth of business. Now's the time to answer, what does Brexit mean? CGTN Europe has asked people across Europe. We've analysed the discussion on social media, and we've looked at the facts and figures. Are you one of those who's already feeling the change? Did you take part in the debate on social media? Join us throughout the week on television and online to mark 100 days since the UK reset its relationship with the EU. And have your say as part of our live and interactive show on Facebook from 12 GMT on Sunday the 11th of April.
Welcome back to CGTN London. A reminder of our top story today. 41 gun salutes ring out across the UK in tribute to Prince Philip, who died on Friday, aged 99. And since we've been on air, we've learned the Duke's televised funeral will take place next Saturday at St George's Chapel in Windsor Castle. Let's take a look then at other news stories around the world. Chinese regulators have fined the Alibaba Group a record $2.75 billion. That's China's highest antitrust fine. Officials say the company, founded by entrepreneur Jack Ma, violated anti-monopoly rules and abused its dominant market position. The penalty comes amid increased scrutiny of homegrown technology conglomerates in the past few months for anti-competitive practices. The Labour Union says it's going to challenge the result of a vote that could have seen Amazon's first unionised warehouse in the United States. Workers at the facility in Bessemer, Alabama, voted against the retail, wholesale and department store unions' efforts by nearly 1,800 votes to 738. The outcome is a big blow to the US labour movement, which claims there was illegal interference in process. And ash has blanketed the Caribbean island of St Vincent after a volcano erupted there. La Soufrière had laid dormant since 1971, but started showing signs of activity in December and erupted twice on Friday. Around 16,000 residents have been evacuated, with experts warning that the eruptions could continue over the next few days. So more now on this week's riots in Northern Ireland, not solely caused by Brexit, but they have undoubtedly fuelled anger amongst loyalists and the deal struck between London and Brussels in December. On the 23rd anniversary of the Good Friday Agreement, which ended decades of violence in Northern Ireland, our special coverage of 100 days of Brexit looks now at its impact on the United Kingdom itself. In dividing Britain from the EU, Brexit has also exposed fault lines, it seems, within the UK, testing the unity of the state. In the 2016 referendum, the UK as a whole voted by 52 to 48% to leave the European Union. But while most voters in England and Wales backed to leave, Scotland and Northern Ireland saw majorities in both countries against Brexit of 62% and 56% respectively. Northern Ireland remains in the EU customs union and has new administrative barriers, with the rest of the UK strengthening the hand of those seeking to rejoin the Republic of Ireland after a century of partition. One recent poll found support for Irish reunification at 42%, still a minority, but that figure is still rising. Let's take a look then at Scotland, meanwhile. That voted against leaving the UK in its own 2014 referendum. But polls since Brexit have shown rising support for independence, and that now stands at 47%, taking an average of polls conducted in the first 3 months of this year. And Brexit-backing Wales is even committed to remaining with its English neighbour, but even there, one recent poll put support for independence at a record high of 35%. Well, Andrew Wilson has more on those pressures building within the UK and the part Brexit has played in fuelling the flames of violence in Northern Ireland.
In Northern Ireland, Brexit has gone sour for the Unionists. They see a new border in the Irish Sea, restricting trade, stretching their links with the UK, and encouraging the Republicans, those who want nothing to do with Westminster. In Belfast, two communities still live either side of concrete and wire. It's called the Peace Wall, but no one's knocking it down just yet or painting over the murals.
On the broader psychology of our two main communities, the past is incredibly important. There's a sense that history has not yet reached its conclusion, and that continually takes us back to the reminders of the past, because people don't want to lose the energy and dynamic of their political campaign.
And while the Unionists talk of betrayal by Boris Johnson and Westminster, the Republicans have spotted the independence movement in Scotland as an example.
On the Republican side, of course, they're using they're indirectly supporting Scottish independence because they see that as a way of keeping the debate here in Northern Ireland going. Certainly the debate on the Northern Ireland border poll would certainly still be going here, but it would not be at the level it's at without the debate, current debate going on in Scotland.
Certainly in Edinburgh, the independence platform is serving the Scottish Nationalist Party well. But the UK is a deeply complicated constitutional structure with internal borders, devolved governments, health and security services. It's a complex cart to topple over.
What Brexit has done, in a sense, is forced the UK to look inward, and it has revealed the diversity that is the United Kingdom. The Prime Minister, in the context of COVID, has used the language of the four nations, which in itself is quite new. But what's not yet clear is the extent to which the UK government is able and willing to celebrate its diversity, to celebrate the fact that there are different governments with different mandates operating within the United Kingdom.
Take back control. That was the key message deployed by the Brexiteers to win the EU referendum back in 2016. Now in government, that same team meets here at the Cabinet Office to prepare for the day that the Scottish politicians might deploy a similar sentiment to break up the union. There's a concern now that should the government read the signs incorrectly, it may lose control in any number of potential pressure points. In a post-Brexit UK, it may well be the union itself that pays the price. Andrew Wilson, CGTN.
Well, the question now is, how does all this impact public opinion? Well, my colleague Jamie Owens spoke to Sir John Curtis, a polling expert and professor of politics at the University of Strathclyde, and he started by asking him whether the first 100 days of Brexit had changed any minds.
The country still looks pretty much divided down the middle on the subject, much as it was indeed back in June 2016. Now, beyond that, the truth is that certainly ever since the 2017 general election, the polls have suggested that actually there was probably a small majority after that point in favour of remaining inside the European Union, primarily because those people who didn't vote in 2016 began quite clearly to suggest that they were in favour of remaining rather than leaving. That said, more recently, two things to bear in mind. If we ask people whether or not, now that the UK is out, whether they wanted to rejoin or stay out, you find the level of support for rejoining is a little bit lower than its level of support for remaining, and there may indeed be a small majority for staying out. The second thing to note is that really after 3 years or so of very, very stable attitudes, just in the last couple of weeks or so, we've seen polls begin consistently to show a swing against the EU. Indeed, for the first time, YouGov in a question finding more people feeling that the decision to leave was right than wrong. And that does seem to be linked to the vaccination row and the speedier rollout of vaccination in the UK as compared with the EU. So just very recently, the coronavirus pandemic and its spillover into the Brexit debate may just have shifted opinion a little bit.
Scotland has an election coming up. It looks like support for independence and the Scottish National Party is very strong indeed. How much of a part is Brexit in this?
Brexit's played a pretty crucial role in the rise in support for independence in Scotland, which first registered in 2019 and has continued since. Support has come down from having been particularly high the back end of last year, but it's very, very clearly linked to Brexit, because basically what you can demonstrate is that all of the rise in support for independence in 2019 and subsequently, as compared with the position beforehand, occurred amongst those who voted to remain. Indeed, the issue of independence and the issue of Brexit now become quite heavily intertwined in Scotland in a way that was not true back in the 2014 independence referendum. Then your attitudes towards Europe didn't seem to make much difference as far as your attitudes towards independence is concerned. In contrast now, high 50% of Remain voters in Scotland say that they are in favour of independence and say they support the SNP. Meanwhile, support for independence amongst Leave voters is no more than a third or so.
We're seeing some of the worst disturbances on the streets of Northern Ireland for years. Again, what part of this is about Brexit?
Well, of course, Northern Ireland was another part of the UK that voted by a majority to remain, just like Scotland. But also, the Brexit referendum produced a division on top, an intensification of that division between Unionists and Nationalists in Northern Ireland. Nationalists voted overwhelmingly to remain inside the EU. Unionists more divided, but a majority of them voting in favour of Brexit. So now, given that as a result of this, we have seen the requirement for quite a lot of trade moving between Great Britain and Northern Ireland to have to be checked on the Northern Irish Sea border, that certainly offends against unionist sensibilities. And certainly, this seems to be part of, though it's probably only part of the reason as to why we're beginning to see some civil violence in Northern Ireland. But certainly Brexit's not made it any easier to maintain the peace between unionists and nationalists in Northern Ireland.
So John Curtis talking there to Jamie Owen. Well, our week-long special coverage concludes at the same time on Sunday here on The World Today with a look at the global implications of Brexit. And tune in to our social media as well at 12 GMT for our special interactive social media show featuring analysis and the voices of some of those affected. We're going to be taking a look behind those hashtags and how the Brexit battle has played out online with the help of social media, intelligence platform Digimind. We've picked apart the conversations of the last 5 years to analyse who's been tweeting, when, from where and about what, and even which emojis they've been using the most. That all coming up 12 GMT live on Facebook and YouTube. And in just a moment, my colleague Stephen Cole will be here with the agenda. And this week's show looks back on the last 100 days of the UK trading by its own rules and what's changed for the EU after the Brexit breakup. That's coming up on the agenda with Stephen Cole right after The World Today at 16:30 GMT, right here on CGTN. Now, coral reefs are nicknamed the rainforests of the sea. They attract visitors, but also need to be protected from them. CGTN's Li Juanha pays a visit to those dedicated to protecting coral in South China to see how they're balancing competing needs.
This island in the tropical province of Hainan is attracting tourists from all over China. One of the many reasons behind the island's popularity, scuba diving, giving the adventurers a chance to see the beauty of coral up close. Changing into a diving suit, I meet Wang Fengguo, whose job is repairing and planting the coral around this area.
I came to the company in the early 2000s. Back then, coral reefs under the sea were abundant, though I can't say they were all over the seabed. But because of the deterioration of the natural environment, such as typhoons and heavy rainfall, the coral reefs were severely damaged. My company is quite concerned about this, so they created a department to repair them.
One and his assistant collect the rubbish from below and check up on the coral down on the seabed. He spends nearly 3 weeks every month nurturing the coral.
It's my first time for scuba diving. Thanks, of course, with the help of professional divers, and I saw the coral reefs in the sea with my own eyes for the first time. It was a fun experience.
But what's fun for tourists may not be good for nature, and visitors can play havoc with ocean life despite repeated calls on people to protect the marine environment. I visit top Chinese expert Wang Hui, who has been studying coral for decades. Her lab here has over 80 varieties.
The coral reef ecosystem is unique due to its high biodiversity and productivity. It's called the rainforest of the sea and very much acts like one. About 1/4 of fish live in coral reefs. Now they are being severely depleted, so we're resorting to artificial methods to restore its ecosystem.
Part of Wang's job is diving to check up on coral and bringing some of the newer ones back for analysis. Wang hopes concerted efforts can be made to raise people's awareness about the need to protect coral. The challenge to develop tourism while protecting the environment is an ongoing struggle, and authorities will have to balance carefully in popular hotspots like Sanya. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Sanya.
And that's just about it for The World Today. Thanks very much for watching. We're available on smart TV apps such as Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire and Android TV. You can also find us on YouTube and, of course, at cgtn.com. That is just about it from all the team here in London. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.